Okay, let's unpack this. We are going deep today on a story that, well, was technically news, but which you probably missed.
Or maybe saw it and just scrolled right past.
Exactly. It feels like background noise.
Yeah.
It's about a single event that didn't really move the needle on oil prices, didn't dominate any front pages, but we think it signals a profound structural shift in how global commerce is, for lack of a better word, policed. So the core fact is pretty straightforward. Late last year, the U.S. seized a sanctioned oil tanker. This was happening near Venezuela.
Right.
And sure, there was diplomatic chatter afterwards. Cuba had some strong things to say. But the initial market reaction,
Nothing.
crickets. I mean, the price of oil didn't spike.
Yeah.
No panic in the shipping insurance sector, at least
Yeah.
not publicly. It felt like a crisis that was, confined to a few specialist desks.
And that silence is exactly where we need to start.
Yeah.
Our source material confirms it. The original price reaction was limited. It was quiet. And this is the critical analytical jump you have to make. The absence of a big, immediate price move doesn't mean there's an absence of impact. Not at all.
It just means it hasn't been priced in yet.
It just means the market hasn't really processed the full implication of the action. It's still digesting.
Which I think is why it was so easy for most people to miss. I mean, you look at the surface, and it seems like a standard U.S. versus a sanctions state story.
We've seen it before.
We've seen variations of this drama for decades,
Yes.
right? So why isn't this just another predictable move in a well-established geopolitical chess game?
Because the game board itself just got bigger, and the rules for the pieces have changed.
How so?
Historically, sanctions enforcement was all about the flow of money. You restrict banks, you freeze assets, you cut off, financial channels.
Right, it was digital or on land.
Exactly. The enforcement was mostly confined to that digital layer of banking. This seizure wasn't about blocking a wire transfer. This was about expanding enforcement directly into the physical maritime space.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. Are you saying that the physical location of the enforcement is as important as the legal intent behind it?
I'm saying it might be more important in this case.
What makes seizing a ship on the water so fundamentally different from, say, seizing a bank account?
It changes everything. It's because of what the sea represents in global commerce. It's not just a highway for goods,
The whole system.
It's the critical nexus point. It's where three absolutely essential systems, logistics, global marine insurance, and payment settlement, all have to align perfectly.
If one of those fails.
The entire transaction is ruined. The whole thing falls apart. So when you physically seize a vessel, you're not just taking an asset. You're intervening right at that junction point. You are making the risk instant and physical for the ship owner, the insurer, the financier, and the port operator all at once. So it shifts the whole foundation. You go from a theoretical risk of, getting caught breaking a financial rule to the immediate tangible risk of your physical asset being taken away.
It's a new kind of deterrence.
It is. It's what we mean by bringing a kind of maritime sanctions OS into full operational effect.
That raises some pretty immediate practical questions for anyone moving goods around the world.
Of course.
If a major power can just instantly declare a $100 million asset illegal and physically take it, what happens to global logistics when those pillars of insurance and payment become instantly uncertain?
That is where the fundamental structural problem really lies.
Yeah.
And we call it the speed mismatch.
Speed mismatch. Okay, talk us through that, maybe with an analogy.
Sure. Imagine you have two layers of a system, and they're operating at vastly different speeds.
Okay.
The decision to enforce and the physical seizure itself, that's the high-speed layer. Think of it like pressing enter on a massive software update. It's instantaneous. But the institutions that are supposed to manage and absorb that risk, the international legal frameworks, the massive marine reinsurance companies, the complex supply chains, they're all low-speed layers. They operate on cycles of months, sometimes years.
So when the high-speed intervention hits that low-speed system,
You get friction, a lot of it. A vessel is seized in hours, but rewriting an international reinsurance policy or clarifying jurisdiction in admiralty courts.
Yeah.
That takes months.
so the boundary between what's legal and what's just risky gets blurry.
Instantly blurry. And the risk adjustment that's required accelerates way faster than the institutional capacity to handle it. The source actually calls this the friction heat point.
Okay, but if that friction and risk is escalating so quickly behind the scenes, why is the market still so calm? Why aren't we seeing massive risk premiums or some kind of disruption headline? Is everyone just ignoring it?
They're not ignoring it. They're digesting it. And that's the paradox of the silence.
Right.
The major players, we're talking global banks, the biggest insurers, the world's largest logistics firms, right now, they are running scenario analyses. They're stress testing their contracts. They're quietly changing their internal rulebooks to price in this newly confirmed physical risk.
So the effects won't be sudden.
No, not at all. This is a delayed action shark. The global system isn't going to collapse overnight. Instead, the pressure will build up, and it'll show up first in the weakest links.
A margin rail.
Marginal supply routes, the smaller vessels, the more vulnerable countries that rely on complex or, gray zone logistics. It's like a deep internal stress fracture that just hasn't reached the surface yet. The tension is building, but it takes time to crack through.
So we should be looking at these internal changes in behavior, not just the external price movements. Which brings us to the operational reality. Let's really focus this down.
Okay.
If you're a ship owner or you're running a trade desk, what practical behavioral shifts should you be watching for?
The primary shift is a really powerful increase in risk aversion. And it's not just limited to people dealing directly with sanctioned countries.
It radiates outward.
It does. The incentive to simply avoid involvement is growing exponentially across the entire supply chain. So if you're a global reinsurer, a big European bank, or a major shipping registry, you're now very, very aware that this kind of physical enforcement is real, it's tangible, and it's fast. The risk calculus just completely shifts from how much money can I make to how certain am I that an enforcement action won't just erase this multi-million-dollar asset.
And when risk avoidance spikes like that, you start seeing a compliance-driven withdrawal from areas that were previously considered gray zones.
Exactly.
But if all the safe, large-scale financial and insurance mechanisms pull out, what happens to the legitimate commerce that still needs to happen in those regions? I mean, food, energy trades, humanitarian supplies.
That is the crucial and, frankly, the most dangerous implication. We call this the compatibility error. The logical, well-intentioned global sanctions system ends up compressing the local survival economies of these sanctioned and adjacent states too hard. But the system doesn't just stop.
It adapts.
It finds an inefficient, high-risk way to continue. It basically optimizes toward danger.
Like a pressure valve.
It's exactly like a pressure valve.
Yeah.
If you try to stop all the regulated, insured, transparent oil flow, the demand doesn't just vanish. Instead, the evasion network, it becomes smaller, more fragmented, and much, much riskier. It starts using smaller, older, sometimes unseaworthy vessels. It operates without credible insurance, it takes greater risks on routes, and it shifts transactions entirely underground.
So the unintended consequence of tighter, more physical enforcement is that you're pushing necessary commerce into these completely uninsured, high-risk shadow networks.
Yes.
That sounds like a long-term safety and environmental nightmare, never mind the geopolitical angle.
Precisely. The system is pushing the risk burden onto the most vulnerable and the least regulated parts of the chain. And this means the systemic movement is unlikely to be some sudden dramatic breakdown that dominates the headlines.
It will be a Lehman moment.
No, not even close. Instead, it will manifest as hesitation and withdrawal, a gradual thinning of the reliable marginal energy and supply routes.
And that thinning is hard to see day to day.
Very hard to see. But it reduces the overall resilience of the global supply chain, one withdrawn insurer and one rerouted vessel at a time.
It's almost the opposite of a crisis. It's more like a quiet erosion of institutional trust and redundancy.
That's a great way to put it. The resilience of the system, that extra layer of cushion that's provided by reputable insurance and predictable legal frameworks, it's slowly being chipped away.
Which brings us right back to the start. If global flows and systemic rules are changing before prices or headlines tell us they are, what are the subtle signals we should be watching for in the coming months? How do we use this one event as a lens?
I think the quiet takeaway, the cognitive anchor here, is that this seizure isn't something you needed to react to on the day it happened. It's something you must remember.
A mental bookmark.
Exactly. So when you see subsequent stories, maybe about inexplicable port delays in certain regions, or reports detailing how the cost of marine insurance has spiked for specific, formerly routine trade routes, connect it back to this. This is the moment the rules of the system began to shift. This event signals that the operating environment for global commerce, the very air that ships sail through, has become strained, and the resulting friction is making it harder and riskier and more expensive to move things around the world.
It's fascinating. We're all trained to look for the explosion, right? The financial panic. But the real structural change often happens in the quiet compliance departments of insurance firms, reacting to one single successful enforcement action.
That's where the change takes root.
So the final provocative thought for you, the listener, is this. The flow of goods and energy is being quietly rerouted right now by risk managers adjusting to this new reality. And logistics, it's the invisible infrastructure of our daily lives. So how and where will this change? This change we don't usually notice, eventually show up in our real-life experience. Will be in the cost of energy, the unexpected disappearance of some imported product from a shelf, or maybe just a general, unsettling lack of reliable options. The quiet rewiring is underway. That was a true deep dive into systemic knowledge versus headline noise. Thank you for joining us as we explored this quiet turning point. Until next time, stay curious and keep analyzing.